Okay, 6:30, so we can start the meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to the Developmental Review Board for the Town of Essex. Today is February 6th of 2025.
Recording in progress.
Our second meeting with an application to review. I'd like to take a quick second and have board members just announce who's here, and we'll double check and see who's online as well. Let's start with you.
Dustin, here.
Trevor, here.
Ian Carroll.
Sharon Zakeski.
Nick Martin here.
Huey Norton here.
Catherine Sonic.
And Kent Johnson.
And online we have, I think the only one that we don't have names for is the individual named TD. Is that correct? If we could have the gentleman or person who's listed as TD to unmute and just listening in. We generally have to have those names for a record, if you're willing to share. Okay. Okay. First order of business would be to look at the agenda and see if we have any additions or changes. Does anybody have any additions or changes that they'd like on the agenda? Oh, we'll wait a second for people coming in. So just looking to see if anybody has any changes to the agenda. Hearing none, then I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as is.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Dusty, seconded by Hubie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Did you want me to outline that Stephanie is not here? Should I outline that? No. Okay. Okay. All right. Now we've come to the time where we have the public to be heard. This is the time when anyone in the public, both online or here in the room, has an opportunity to talk about anything with us that is not on the agenda this evening. Just want to remind everybody that this proceeding is conducted in an orderly manner, and it is quasi-judicial, so we will ask people to swear in. Does anybody in the audience have anything they'd like to bring up today?
Gina Barrett. Gina Halpin.
Gina Halpin. Gina Halpin online. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just wanted to quickly add my 2 cents in from the last meeting with the proposal that it was on the agenda as being an industrial district, but I think the road actually did go through industrial, but the property I think is in our PDI, not industrial. So I don't even know if it matters that I'm bringing this up, but I was disappointed to see that there was a waiver issued for the 50-foot buffers within I think it's our PDI, unless someone corrects me, which is entirely possible. But to see a waiver for the 50-foot buffer within the RPDI, one of the things brought up often is that it's just scrub, which I can't imagine it's all scrub, but maybe it is. And the other issue seems to be that trees have fallen on cars, and if that is used as a reason to override the regulations, I would like to see the applicant provide documentation that trees have fallen on cars. I get nervous of the death by 1,000 cuts within Saxon Hill, that we are removing trees, that we're losing animal corridors, that even if it is scrub, that species and wildlife and small mammals that live and use those as roots. I border our PDI. My house is right up against Blodgett. The 200-foot buffer isn't really enough of a buffer for us either, but I just really hate to see all those trees cut down, and I was surprised to see in a preliminary hearing that a waiver was issued. I just didn't know that was going to happen, especially it wasn't clear that it was within our PDI. The objective of our PDI is supposed to be to protect such natural attributes for public enjoyment, and to carry out development activities in harmony with the natural surroundings. And I would hope that we stick to the regulations as much as possible and the intent of the land as written in the town plan and voted on by the public. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Do we have anyone else that has a comment they'd like to make? Hearing none. Then I think we are through on the public to be heard section. I think the first item that we have up tonight is
Swearing.
the swearing in. Yes, you're right. Thank you. If I could have everyone that has the idea that they may want to speak about the application that's in front of us. If you are online, we'll ask that you raise your virtual hand, and those of you who are here, raise your hand. Do you hereby affirm that the testimony or evidence you're about to give in the application under consideration is accurate and true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
You do.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Great. Thank you very much.
So, point of order.
Yep.
How do we know that these people were sworn in, just sworn in, how do we know that they responded with "I do"? I saw Ken Signorelli raise his hand and nod, but I wasn't sure if anyone else.
David Rue raised his virtual hand.
Yep.
Nobody else did.
That was the only one that I saw was David. So anyone else that I would call on, I would request
Okay,
that
so
they
you
swear
did
in.
see David. I
I
missed
did,
that,
yep.
okay.
Yep.
I think it's troubling. We had in the minutes here where we had, somebody commented, person unknown, that's, so anyway, all right?
Yep.
Recognize that, thank you.
Thanks. So our first item is we have a preliminary hearing for the Pinewood Manor. If we could have the applicants come up to the table and start off with Kent, sorry.
Last doll.
Yeah.
Right, this is for the Pinewood Section I subdivision application. Been in front of the town a few times here. This application that they submitted is the same one that was previously at the Planning Commission, and then then it was resubmitted to the DRB once the switchover happened. So there have not been any changes to the application since then. So there's an updated staff report that just reflects the changes in terminology from the Planning Commission to the DRB, and the findings are the same as previously were going to be in front of the Planning Commission last December, which I'll just very briefly summarize it for anybody who's not familiar with it. The design concept was originally proposed about 4 years ago, and there have been a number of efforts over the years to address the impacts to the steep slopes that would be involved in this particular project. After a number of iterations with it, the application still fails to meet the address the original steep slope impact concerns that were first brought up, and then consequently staff is recommending denial because of the rather severe impact to the steep slopes. But I believe this evening the applicant has something else that they'd like to share with us as an alternate, so maybe instead of going into more detail with this, I would just wait to see if there's something else to talk about.
Okay. Thank you, Kent. Gentlemen, if you don't mind announcing your names for the record.
Brian Courier, Larry Burke Civil Associates, representing Pinewood Manor.
Brian Marcotte, applicant for Pinewood Manor.
Sure. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours to talk a little bit about your application. Something we've seen, but something that we can hear about again.
Yeah, so half of you have seen it, the other half haven't. So I thought the place to start was giving an overview of the project, as it's currently constituted, and then getting into the changes that Kent alluded to.
Okay.
Do you mind pulling up our title sheet, Kent?
For the new
No,
submitted to?
I'm going to go through quickly, and I won't be but the original application that was submitted in front of you. So the 32 unit layout, please.
Do you want me to try to find that? Or do you have it handy?
I do not.
Just to be clear, so we're going to talk about the application that's before us currently, right?
Yeah, so the application that's in front of you is the same as the one that half of you saw at the Planning Commission level. The other three folks now joining us, I was just going to give an overview
Yep,
of the project
great.
because it is still the 32 unit application in front of you. We do want to discuss a reduction in units with you folks that we think better satisfies the concerns of the Planning Commission.
Okay.
But as we have half of a new board, we
Yep.
thought that would be a good place to
I
start.
think that's great.
Yeah.
Title sheet. I got it.
Yeah, sheet 2 should be the one on the top.
You got it? Thank you.
Sorry, now I've got it. Sure.
Great. So this is our title sheet. It's an overall plan. So this is section I. I think every time I've done one of these meetings, I remind everyone that we did start at section A. So we've gone through a good amount of the alphabet starting back from the 70s. So this is one of the last phases of Pinewood. It includes a 115 acre parcel basically in between section H, which is the loop subdivision, kind of in the center of your. Oh, that's not gonna work, is it?
They might work with screens, laser pointer.
Yeah, it's not gonna work, is it? Okay. So the loop is section H. That was constructed over the last probably 6, 7, 10 years or so.
It started at 2006.
Yeah, yeah, and then
Approved.
it really got going within the last 10, but and then so section I is everything north of that, in between section H and the Cirque Highway. As I mentioned already, it's a 115 acre parcel. It's in the R2 zoning district. It's in your town sewer core map. Currently is allocated for 96 equivalent units, which essentially that means 96 houses. It has a master plan dating back from 2003 for a total of 73 units. Like I said, it's in the town sewer core. It has access to public water. It has 4 public access points from Russet Drive, 2 on Stonebrook Circle, and 1 on Timberlane Drive. The one on Rustic you don't see. It's more to the west of the view that's in front of you. The proposal includes 3 private driveways. On the north end of Stonebrook Circle, there's 3 units served off a private driveway. In the middle of your picture here, there's 4 units off a private driveway, and then there's about a 900-foot long cul-de-sac coming off the southern termination of Stonebrook Circle that turns immediately right, ends in a cul-de-sac about 900 feet long. There's single-family lots along the first half of it, and where the cul-de-sac is, there's 15 triplex units. Multifamily units have never been proposed in Pinewood. Traditionally, they're 100-foot frontage single-family homes. If you can scroll down a little bit, Catherine, you can see our last 2 units coming off the end of Timberlane. So that's where the existing sawmill is now for any abutters. So there's a total of 32 units. Like I said, 15 are multis. The remaining 17 were single families. This is what I would consider a true plan unit development where we're concentrating units in the flattest areas possible. The remaining lands is proposed to be left open. It was equivalent to about 87 acres of open space. Due to the Homes Act now, this type of parcel is really being targeted given that it has access to municipal water and sewer facilities at 5 units an acre, which is a requirement of the state now. Would put the density over 500 units here. Obviously, we don't know. We know that that's not going to happen, but it just lends to the scarcity of municipal utilities and where the state is really trying to push new housing projects, given the current housing crisis that we're in. This development has had many iterations, as Ken alluded to. This is the most, I feel, tactical in avoiding steep slopes that we've been able to come up with. And just to remind some of the folks and for the new people, some of the steep slope homework we've done over the last years, we were required to get a geotechnical engineer to review our project grading plans. They did provide a letter essentially saying that they had no concerns with the development that was in front of you. We took it upon ourselves to get a 90-20 moderate risk permit for construction activities associated with stormwater discharges. That's an erosion control permit from the state of Vermont. The town typically leans on that permit for projects. Usually we don't get those permits until we're through the town. We elected to get it ahead of time in order to show that the state of Vermont would permit a development of this kind. Just so you know, there's 3 different levels: low risk, moderate risk, and individual. So this is moderate, being in the middle of that scale. We also, when we met with the Planning Commission in the fall of 2024, there was feedback given that having Public Works and Hamlin engineers who have provided review comments throughout the proposal, getting them to agree that our erosion control plan and design essentially was adequate or something that they would support, as they hadn't up until the fall of 2024. So we went through probably 10 pages of comments that we were reluctant to do because we were afraid that the steep slope issue might not be a bar that we could cross. So we didn't want to invest the time to do all their comments, but we did based on feedback we received in the fall. And Public Works and Hamlin did agree that our erosion control plan and measures that were being proposed were adequate given the scope of the project. So when we met with the Planning Commission after we had those sign-offs in the winter of '24, the second to last meeting that the Planning Commission had while reviewing development applications, we didn't feel that we got the support that we were expecting, having gone through all the homework we had been given for the steep slopes. Geotechnical engineer, moderate risk permit, Public Works, Hamlin, and then, you know, my license numbers on every single one of these plan sheets. So given all of that support, we were surprised that we didn't get the feedback that we were expecting. Seemingly the steep slope issue, regardless of what other town departments had said, was still an issue with that current version of the Planning Commission. All right, so we elected to withdraw. Basically, where that conversation ended up was the Planning Commission continued their deliberative session, as it was kind of a late night. I think we were the last ones on the agenda that night. They elected to continue them into December of 2024. And before that meeting, we elected to withdraw the application with the intent of resubmitting an application to the DRB, and by doing so, we wanted to discuss with you folks the option of removing the public road as part of this proposal. So the public road section, I'll just point it out here so there's no confusion here. But the public road is this 900-foot long cul-de-sac, 15 triplex units, and 8 single-family homes. And by doing so, we would significantly decrease the amount of steep slopes that we were impacting. And what would remain is a 10-unit layout. Can you go to our the title plan from the one I sent you earlier, Kent? Or
yeah,
Catherine, whoever's driving. So this is the version we wanted to discuss with you folks tonight. So as you can see, the cul-de-sac has been removed. We're down to 10 units. If you could go to the first site plan, Catherine. Sheet 4. So This is essentially the same design as what was in front of the Planning Commission previously. It's a driveway coming off the end of Stone Brook Circle, serving now instead of 3 units, we're adding this 4th unit off the end of Stone Brook Circle. That had been in our proposal when we did our sketch plan application. However, we had conversations with town staff whether or not it could be subdivided via simple parcel rather than being done as part of this PUD. We had been given an indication that it could. Turns out there was more to it than that, so we just kind of left it for now. So as part of this proposal, we would want that 4th lot. Because it's a PUD, the town has been supportive for 4 units off a driveway, rather than traditionally the town only allows 2. That gives the flexibility of dimensional standards as part of the planned unit development. The fire chief is okay with it, Public Works is okay with it, the planning commission was okay with it. Essentially, this is a 20-foot wide paved driveway to these 3 units. The only change from this layout from what the planning commission saw is basically I squared up lot 2, or the unit shown on lot 2, and pushed it forward with lot 1, basically taking this slope that was being cut in the back here to divert stormwater off of this ridge in the back here. Basically that gets moved forward. So this was an area of 20% slope impact that has been lessened by everything getting shifted forward. You can go to the next one, Catherine. 5. So this has had a little bit more of a change than what the Planning Commission originally saw. It's got the same dimensional standards as what was on the other side of Stone Brook Circle. Still your 20-foot wide paved driveway to access 4 lots. But basically before we had a lot in this neck of the woods over here, which created a pretty substantial clearing limit and grading to get to our storm pond that was down on the entrance of this driveway. So we relocated that lot along this line of lots. And basically by eliminating this lot, we lose quite a bit of disturbance that was greater than 20% steep slopes. And this road is just laid out a little more efficiently because we don't have to be as low in order to access this lot. So we pick up extra area that was previously being impacted, and then this road is being more efficiently designed to not impact steep slopes. So we have our 4 units at the end here. 4, 5, and 7, or sorry, 5, 6, and 7 were here originally. They were just changed. They were just shifted a little bit in order to get that 4th one there. So you'll see this is where the public road would have come out. You can see the substantial grading that was associated with that unit. It is more as you go towards the east. In the Planning Commission meetings, one of the things that I discussed was the regulations as they talk to steep slopes don't define, they really don't give any guidance on what a 20% slope is, right? So a 20% slope over a 1-foot vertical rise could be a roadside swale, right? 20% is a 1-on-5 slope. Roadside swales are substantially more than that, right? So nobody believes that that was the intention of the regulation, that you shall not impact slopes greater than 20%. On the other end, you know, we're not proposing 100 units out on this 100-acre parcel of Pinewood Manor. Obviously, that's the other far end of the spectrum. So where the acceptable amount of steep slopes to be impacted, where that number is something that, you know, obviously we're fine-tuning the more times we present this plan. And, you know, one of the things I talked about was a 20% slope over a consistent vertical rise, saying over a 30-foot vertical rise or a 50-foot vertical rise. In my interpretation of that regulation, that's what that is intended to be. Not 20% slope, blanket, can't touch them. You know, that's in my opinion, a very conservative way to view a 20% slope, no impact standard. And the reason I say that is this public road went through a ridge line that's in this neck of the woods over here that had about a 30-foot vertical rise from the top to the bottom of the slope, we were probably going to cut 20 feet of that out. So in our discussions with the planning commission, that is something I keyed in on as being the most troublesome impact that we would be proposing as part of this project. So that's being eliminated. If you go to sheet 8, Catherine, I think it is. So this one, the only change is there was an infiltration pond that was right here that kind of went over a slope, and then there's a discharge pipe at the bottom of this ravine through here. And basically what we did was we relocated that to a few infiltration basins or dry wells along the eastern side of the property here. So basically this stormwater treatment facility is getting changed into an infiltration component, lessening our footprint, reducing steep slope impact. So those are the changes that we've done. Obviously, again, the biggest one is the removal of the public road. And what those accomplish, I'm going to skip to the recommendations part of the staff report, Ian, if that's okay.
Yep.
So it kind of, at the bottom, starting at line 706 down to 712, kind of gives the statistics of our steep slope impact. It says 115-acre site. The DINE proposes to disturb 12.21 acres. So that 12.21 acres has now been reduced to 5.33 acres. So less than half. And of the 12.21 acres of land to be disturbed, 7.1 acres, or 58%, are calculated to impact steep slopes. So that 12.21 acres is now 5.33, like I said. Of land to be disturbed, 7.1 acres are calculated to be steep slopes. That 7.1 is now 2.94, which is 55%. And then on the next line, 7.1 acres of steep slopes to be impacted, 5.06 acres, or 71% of the impacted steep slope areas are 20% grade or steeper. The 5.06 number, which is the, in my opinion, the biggest issue at hand, that 5.06 acres of slopes greater than 20% is now 2.04. So it's a reduction, a pretty substantial reduction, about 60% reduction in the amount of 20% slopes being impacted, and that equates to about 40% of the impacted steep slope areas. And then the last bullet, 41% of the land to be disturbed are slopes 20% or greater. I don't think that's as vital as the other numbers we discussed, but that's been dropped down to 38%. So I guess in summary, we've reduced our impact to steep slopes by roughly 60%. We think it's a huge step on our part in order to find a plan that's approvable from you folks. I would just mention that this is our last change. We're not going to go down any further. We think this is more than fair. So we're kind of looking at two avenues now. We're either looking at this 10-acre layout that we will build. Given where we are in the housing crisis, I think 32 units is more in line with what the zoning regs want for this type of area and the utilities that are available. But we're willing to go to this 10-acre layout. Or if we face a denial on the 32-unit layout, then, our only course of action at that point is to appeal. So we're either looking at a fork in the road here, either a appeal of a 32-unit denial, or we'd like to work with you folks and do this 10-unit layout that we think is more in line with the Planning Commission's feedback in the winter of 2024. Now, again, half the folks here are new, so we're all ears.
Okay. My first question is going to be, this actually looks an awful lot like a new sketch plan. Well, I mean, a well thought out, but essentially it's a whole new application for us to look at, right? The application that's before us right now is the 32 unit, and so we kind of have to make a decision upon that. I do like some of the changes that you've talked about here, but I think that we want to at least take a look at the existing application, and we can talk about what changes you might want to make from there. And I think we have to kind of make a decision based on that. But I'm willing to open up to the commissioner or the board members, not commissioners, board members, to have any questions to applicant or staff at this point. So, how about you, Dusty? You got any questions?
I actually like the proposed layout, and if it was mine, the suggestion would be to continue this and allow the staff and the applicant to revise
Yep.
the preliminary plan, not going back to sketch, because this
Right.
is a reduction, not an increase. Go back and revise the preliminary report, the application, to reflect what they're suggesting this evening. I would accept the reduction from 32 down to 10, and we don't have a report written for that, so
Right.
we either continue it and rewrite the report, or we act on this completely as it stands.
I think as I see it, I think we have the option we could have the applicant put a hold on the existing application while they submit this new version of the plan for review to come before us. They could withdraw, they could continue with the application, we'd have to decide on it, right? But if I'm not mistaken, correct, staff, that they'd have the option to perhaps put a hold on the existing if they wanted to submit a,
I would
Updated
say
version?
if they wanted to put a hold on what's before you tonight in the staff report, the other one could come forward as a conceptual
yep,
discussion. If they did withdraw this one, which I don't know, to me, doing preliminary on a new plan, even though there's a lot of similarities, seems like a stretch. That's not how we do things. We
I don't think
normally
it's,
go back to
I don't think
sketch.
it's publicly noticed to put forward a completely different plan, and that we haven't even had a chance to review.
Yeah, and the rest of staff hasn't either, so we don't have any comments from other departments.
And
as well.
I also have to say that this new plan, which we're not going to review now, I assume, still is impacting 20% slopes, which is still a huge problem.
So, what we are, obviously we didn't expect an approval, right? So that's off the table, and we know that. Our mission tonight was to get your feedback on this reduced scope. Now, if the thought is it's still impacting 20% slopes, and basically you're over-regulating a parcel to the extent that it can't be developed at all right? If that's the case, then all right, we know what direction we're going to go.
But we can't really discuss it or decide about it because all of us are just seeing
Yeah.
the new thing. So it's
While there are a lot of similarities, and you're pulling a lot of the information from the existing application, there are changes that staff should at least have a chance to comment on, I think. But,
And I would just,
Oh,
as far as going back to Sketch, what is Sketch going to accomplish? I'm going to have the exact same walkthrough that I just did? Is that what we're going to do? You know, it just seems like an incredible waste of...
I would suggest we've seen changes between sketch and preliminary before, and this is still the basic. I would support a revised preliminary application. Is what I'm getting to. I don't feel that sketch is, independent of what he's saying. I don't feel going back to sketch is going to give us anything. We've already got a lot of detail, a lot of information that's in this report, and frankly, the report, I would stand by what Kent wrote if this report, if we had to act on it tonight. I just think revised preliminary would be adequate.
I would agree that, from the inception, when this thing first came in, 4 or 5 years ago, there have been radical changes, okay? So how is this one any less radical than some of the others that were made? I would say, don't go back to sketch. Let's keep this going, okay? because there has been a lot of information. Clearly, the town staff needs to review this. We're not gonna act on that tonight, that's for certain, okay?
Yeah, we know.
We all need to have more time to look at it, but I don't see any need to go back to sketch. That's a step backwards, I think.
I think there's relevance in noting in the preliminary the evolution of this. And tonight's proposal is just an evolution of that sketch
Yeah.
in the preliminary phase.
And just so when we did submit other applications with other iterations to it, if you reviewed our waiver request, basically I walk you through some of the history, and I have screen grabs of what those other layouts went, like how they morphed into where we are now. The first one was very much a traditional Pinewood development that meant to be the, implementation of an approved master plan. And then we pulled it back to this PUD that was kind of half and half. And then, we went to this very, as I said, tactical and precise method of navigating the steep slopes to really concentrate units where they're meant to be. But every time, we were going from public roads to private roads to driveways. Really all we're changing here is we're removing the public road. That's it.
And the housing that goes along with it.
And the housing, unfortunately, that goes along with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, the 20% thing is something that I find quite interesting as well. I agree with you that the parameters are loosey-goosey at best. What if you have
I'll submit that we have a planning commission that can deal with that now.
But what if we have if you have a slope that's 2 feet long and it's more than 20%, and you're impacting that, is that considered part of the, how do you come up with these percentages of impact? That's, I'd be interested in see, there must be some algorithm that's about this long, because like you mentioned, you've got length and how, what is really the 20% mean?
Yeah, so the regs don't say. So basically, the numbers that I'm giving are, so in AutoCAD, you can run a surface-to-surface comparison on LiDAR contours. And basically, you want to put one of them up there, Catherine, one of the colored plans? Basically, it shows the topography exactly as the regulations state. Everything creates a triangle. We have 3 different colors. We have 0 to 15%, 15 to 20, and then 20 and above. And each one of those colors, we'd, put a polyline around our limit of disturbance, and essentially whatever color is within that boundary is how many acres we're impacting of each one of those slopes. So, like we're both saying, it doesn't take into account how big of a ravine we're talking about.
Okay, so for example, if you're using LiDAR, you're using plane. So you're looking at the plane, or are you looking at surface area?
I'm looking at horizontal plane.
Horizontal plane,
That's
much
correct.
different than surface area.
Yeah. And it doesn't
Right.
lend one way or the other, but it is a horizontal plane.
Yeah, well, because because all survey is on the horizontal, but yet when you're talking about slopes, it's not on the horizontal. So if you had a slope that's 2 feet long,
Right.
you versus one that's 20 feet long, you have a lot.
Yeah.
Even though your total
Right.
plane area may
Yeah.
be the same,
Yep.
you could have
Yep.
a lot more surface area impacted. So
Well,
that's so the 20%. Has anybody really discovered where that comes from and how it was calculated? I mean, you came up with a way using LiDAR in your program, but does anybody know what the basis was for that initial 20% in the regulation?
I mean, where that number
Where that number came from?
came
Yeah,
from originally?
yeah. How it was developed?
Well,
what was behind it?
Town
I
plan.
looked at the, on the internet, and it seemed, must have looked at about 20 jurisdictions. State of New Jersey recommended zoning ordinance, county in central New York, stuff like that. I looked, and they all say 20%.
Supposedly 21% is the tipping point with water velocity. And then something else we have to consider is this area has really sandy, loamy soils.
Well, that's the thing. Also, I mean, the soil report, says it's okay, but at the same time, I'm not so sure. I mean, it is. The type of soil is a silty sand. And you can talk all about the angle of repose and all that kind of stuff, but if you have bad weather events where the soil is saturated and it's a sand, the thing we know about sand is that it's a cohesionless soil, then, you know, you could have erosion and things like that. So, I don't know.
I would add also to the vagueness of the 20% standard is the public works details call out design slope. Basically, at the end of a detail, they have design slopes about how you would chase grade back off out of a public right-of-way, or rec path, or sidewalk, or whatever it is. They have design slopes at 1 on 2 or 1 on 3. So I can design a 50% slope, but I can't impact a 20% slope. You know, it's just.
I think the thing is, it's like apples and oranges. If you're talking about, you know, that you're going to design a road or something like that, I think this regulation is to address the fact that you don't want the negative environmental impacts.
I agree.
Yeah, and you know, you don't want stuff washing into the.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've done a lot of homework by licensed professionals to say to such that there's a number of folks who practice this stuff for a living who are saying that the 32 unit development they're comfortable with. And now we're dropping it down to 10 and dropping our impact by 60%.
Dusty, you had
I actually was just going to say that I think it's worth for us remembering that even with the 32 unit application that's in front of us, we have engineering sign off on it. And, you know, most of us aren't engineers. And we have that sign off. And I will say, echo something that was said earlier, is the greatest concern since this has been before in all the earlier iterations, the greatest point of concern was the public road because there were slopes on either side of it. And it wasn't just, you know, uphill slope, it was a downhill slope, it was the entire length of that private road was a major concern. Which I think was said earlier was really the most significant area that was noted. But we have engineering sign off.
We also, though, have a regulation that is different than engineering sign off.
Which is what our job here is, to abide by the regulations, not make them.
I think
But your job is to interpret the regulations and everything that comes along with it.
My interpretation is that slopes that exceed 20% with those soils make the area highly susceptible to erosion.
But the regs don't even talk about soils either, right? It just says 20% slope.
And I think we're kind of getting away from, like, I'm all for having the conversation about the regulations and updating those, but I think that's really something that we should discuss probably more on the planning commission side. And I, as a member of the PC, I'd be welcome to have you come and have a chat about that as well. I think we're kind of steering away for a little bit from what the conversation is here tonight, which is really about the applications in front of us and with it perhaps the adjustment that you've set forth. And I don't mean to cut you off here, but I just get back to what we're
sure,
really here for,
and that's fine. We don't need to split hairs about what the regulations intent is and what it's meant for. You know, if you want to view it as 20% and throw everything else out the window, okay. And if that's the case, then you know we don't feel that we should have to submit a waiver request. But there is a waiver request in front of you that does give you the ability to approve impacts to 20% slopes.
Right.
So there is an avenue there. So even if you say, okay, well it says 20% and we can't get over that, well, there is an avenue to look at the whole picture, I would say, and not just one line of one page of a zoning document.
Right. Kent, I'm going to call on you a little bit, but I think that we had an issue with this application with slopes, but there are a couple of other areas that did we.
There are a number of other issues that all seem like we could address them with some open space issues and how that's going to be managed, and some of the trail-related issues. I think those can all be addressed, which is why they're not highlighted quite as much in the beginning and end of the report. They're discussed throughout the report, but it seemed like the really big issue to try to figure out before getting into the other details is about the steep slopes, because that seemed like we ended up hitting a wall with it. And I think a lot of it is kind of confusing because there's different regulations for different things that are getting mixed up. And something that Public Works is going to look at and something that impacts the road and is within their purview is going to be different than what somebody else is looking at. Like for the zoning regulations that we're looking at, we have a different consideration for that. And the regulations don't say the steep slopes need to be designed in accordance with the best engineering practices available. That's not what they say. They say there's a prohibition against developing on these steep slopes, just like we have other rules that say there's a 45-foot height limit to a building. Well, buildings can be built taller, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's a limit that we're imposing for certain town reasons that we have.
And we've applied for and been granted plenty of height waivers in the past.
So I feel like, it's a little hard to comment on what we have in front of us because I've not had a chance to review it, and I'd really prefer to do that before I would say anything else about it.
Mr. Chairman.
I have a comment. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Nick, earlier, thank you. So it sounds to me that it's pretty clear that we have a new, essentially, a reformed application tonight with new plans, new information presented to us that we didn't have the opportunity to research ourselves. And so I think it would be really helpful to get number confirmations with the new plan moving forward. That would be my recommendation in doing as such, if that's what the applicant wants to do. I think coming to the meeting tonight with a new idea, new plan, applicant sensed how the winds were blowing with the initial, and so proposed something different. A change that might be more palatable for the town, or for the DRB anyway. And so I think it would be helpful for us to have an opportunity to review that if the applicant wants to move forward with that plan.
Yes, sir.
Ryan Marcotte. And like Kent mentioned just a few minutes ago, no, we hadn't addressed the open lands and the possibilities of that, but there was no reason to until we got past, an approvable plan. But I have all intentions of looking at public land trails and very open to making that a benefit for all. But those are details. We got to get past this. So, and I know that really, as it's made clear, the only way around the zoning regs is with a waiver. And the question was, well, what is the applicant offsetting to get the waiver? What's the benefits to the town? Well, we removed a town road, which there's maintenance, so there's no we've taken that away from Public Works a long term, but we're still adding housing stock, and it's all going to be done with the private drives, HOAs, basically self-supporting for the most part. And then with that, we're going to add to the grand list, and it's with minimal as we can get, impact on the Public Works and long-term town consequences. So yes, there's steep slopes out there, and it's Pinewood Manor. It's always been steep, so but it's everything's there, all the utilities, and if there's anywhere to build, you'd think you'd want to make good on infrastructure. And if it was flat, that would be great. That would be just wonderful. It's not. So, but we're doing everything to minimize that as much as possible. And I think you've seen, it's been 4 years of a lot of dedication. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
Another comment, okay, in the recommendation from staff, it says on line 699, it says, ultimately, the waiver request does not provide suitable mitigation measures to offset the substantial environmental impacts to steep slopes that are proposed. That suggests that maybe there is some mitigation measures that would be acceptable.
Could be.
Okay, and I guess I'm wondering if there are, what that might be. I would think the applicant would want to know that as well.
Yeah, and that was a little bit of a point of contention where, during the planning commission hearings, where staff kept bringing up that no mitigation had been proposed, yet our plan is chock full of, I would say, mitigation measures. First and foremost is layout. You know, if you know this end of town, there's ravines all throughout the 100 acres, and we are very tactically proposing the units and the driveways and facilities on the flattest parts possible. We had over an acre of riprap on the previous plan. That will probably be substantially reduced with the new layout. We had erosion control matting. Our erosion control permit only requires us to open 5 acres at a time. So there's a whole slew of things that I feel that we're doing to mitigate
Well,
this.
I guess that's my question, is that the staff has kind of suggested in that statement
Yep.
that there might be something more, and I'm just wondering if there's something specific, or in your opinion, do you think there's something more?
Yeah, and well, I think Public Works had reviewed our prior plans. I think they have the expertise to know what mitigation measures are effective, when they're not. And the 32 unit plan, we got their sign off for the erosion control plan. And that, in essence, is our mitigation strategy for the steep slopes that we are impacting.
For the environmental permit, did the state pose questions?
Nope, they have requirements. Basically, if you meet these requirements,
They did an on-site review your plans and so on?
yeah, all the
Yep.
plans, design plans, were sent to the state.
Yep.
Yep.
And so they had no pushback necessarily about additional mitigation measures?
No, and like I said, that we were a moderate permit for them.
Yep.
So individual is the next step, and then we hired a geotechnical engineer. I see that as a mitigation measure as well.
And one other comment regarding the 20% business is, you've calculated these percentages of impact and so on.
Mhm.
Is that what would be considered an acceptable percentage of impact from the town's perspective? If you were some other part of town, and you had a 10-foot square area
Sure.
that had a 20% slope,
Mhm.
would that preclude you from developing that lot? Again, this gets back to the
No,
ambiguity of the 20%.
I love the question, because I think things aren't looked at from a bird's eye view as much as they should be. I think you should look at the 115 acres and the fact that we're impacting 2 acres of 115 that are primarily greater than 20% slope. I think that matters. Whereas if we are impacting 2 acres on a 3-acre piece, I tend to agree with you, Hubie. I think that's a different conversation.
So you could go through another set of calculations you're suggesting that would show the percentage for the entire,
Of how many slopes are greater than 20%?
yeah, for
Yeah.
the whole thing, and
Yeah.
it would be a significantly less percentage.
Yeah, I mean, just throwing a number out there, I mean, it's probably
I-
70, 80
again,
acres or
it's,
so.
It's like you said, we're not gonna decide on the 20%
Sure.
question
Correct.
necessarily, but I'm just trying to point out that
Yeah.
I think, because that seems to be the crux of what's holding this whole thing up.
Yep.
And the lack of definition is a problem. And lacking the definition, we're gonna have to decide,
Right.
okay?
Mhm.
So, here we are.
And the reason we're going about it the way we're going about it is we've been at this for a long time. In my opinion, we've had some conversations with prior staff members, different versions of the planning commission. I mean, there's been 3 sketch plans that have been approved here, and we've gone down many different roads to be, and some of it's our own doing.
Private
Yeah.
So, some of it's our own doing. Some of it is how Section H was constructed. So we understand all that. But as we keep spending money, the longer we're doing this, what we're asking is I think a fairly simple question is 2 acres of 20% slope impact seemingly at the surface a palatable thing? Or if 4 of you believe that it's a palatable thing, then we're more than happy to make all the plan changes, work with Public Works, figure out the trail issues, master plans, legal documents, everything that comes with it. But we don't want to do that if that's going to hang us up again.
Dusty?
Couple things. One is the 20% is going to be there whether we work on the application that's in front of us or work on a revision. So I would say the 20% is not an item to be dealt with tonight.
Agreed.
It's there. You know, it's coming. There's going to be some supporting it, some not supporting it. There's a waiver, there's not a waiver, whatever. But we've got an application in front of us. Number one, we will have to probably open the public hearing at some stage, but we've got an application that's in front of us. Either we're gonna move to deny and support staff on this application, or we're not. And if we're not, are we gonna continue it and allow that those revisions to be incorporated so that we can look at it as a board, and staff can review it and so forth and prepare it for us? I mean, there's not a lot of discussion. There's not a lot of need for discussion in my mind right now because we don't have an application in front of us that is the one I think the applicant wants to put forward. So I mean, I'd like to open the public hearing and, you know, allow the folks to have the comment who spent the time listening to us, and then more or less what Nick said, and we've said right along, is let's continue it and let it get written the way that the applicant wants it.
Are you
to be
making a
done.
motion for?
No, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second
Aye.
with Nick, and it's okay. All those in favor for opening the public?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. So if there's anybody in the audience or online that would like an opportunity to discuss this application, I'd appreciate that. Show of hands.
I remember that we had a few that didn't.
Yeah, yep. Come on up, ma'am. I see you. The ma'am, yep. Yeah. When you come up, if you don't mind reiterating your name and whether or not you swore in.
I like the reiterating part.
Yep.
Or I understand the reiterating request. I'll
Yep.
put it that way. My name's Natalie Braun, and I live in the Pinewood Manor development.
And did you swear in earlier?
I did.
Okay.
I did indeed. So, given what is happening at the federal level around the rapid dismantling or very likely dismantling of environmental protections, climate change mitigation actions, etc., it becomes imperative that we be doing the very best we possibly can at the municipal level to be making good decisions. And I love the fact that mitigation measures might have been one of the most frequently said words in this conversation, other than the little ands, does, and ands. Because in my mind, the ultimate mitigation measure for this in 2 areas, climate change mitigation and mitigation of any concerns around runoff, loss of biodiversity, loss of habitat, is that you don't touch this parcel, which would be what I would love to see, this 115-acre parcel. That said, and that may seem a little nitpicky given some of the changes that have been proposed. I've said before, we need every tree we can get. But I would implore you all just to consider 3 things going forward in this development application, but in all of the ones you will look at in years to come, is that, if possible, given the climate emergency we are in the midst of, it is essential that we build in as much resilience in our land and in our development as possible. And because those storms, they will get worse and they will get more frequent. And it'll most likely be rain and it'll be wind. And this steam engine is stopping. And anything we can do to maximize the security of the soil through forests, grasslands, not lawns, grasslands, forests, things with deep root systems, we are going to have to do that to maximize our resilience as a municipality to what is coming from a climate change perspective and the extreme weather. And to do that, we have to have a relentless preservation, as I just said, of our forest lands, not cutting them up, not even 5 acres of them if we can possibly avoid it, and maximizing our grasslands. And these all go together because what it fits with beautifully from a municipal level is it fits with the spirit of where the town, at least I thought, was going around smart growth, which is where you have compact, multi-use development. You know, the houses that are in Pinewood, I love my house. I do. I love Pinewood. I do. But where we're going is needing to have much more compact, multi-use, dense, walkable, accessible to public transit, diverse housing options, preservation of open spaces, and in my mind, from a climate emergency perspective, an open space is not a lawn, it's a forest. And it's grasslands and it's wetlands that help mitigate climate change. That is, I think, the spirit of where I thought the town was going. So that this would be, again, even in its reduced state, I think what I'm really saying is going forward, if you never see me again, you probably will. But anyway, is that I hope, yeah, you probably will. But is that I hope you hold these understandings of where we are federally in terms of protections and where we are climate-wise. And it is an emergency. Whatever we can do to mitigate what is coming and to keep us as safe and non-money expending as possible, I would recommend that.
Thank you for your comments.
People online.
Yeah, I see that. Anyone else in the room? Yes, sir. Oh. Come on up. State your name. I don't believe you were here for the swearing,
I don't think so, no.
so I can just have you hold up your hand if you wouldn't mind. And I'll ask if, do you hereby affirm that the testimony and/or evidence that you are about to give in this application under consideration is accurate and true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Great, thank you.
So my name is Megan Beckage. I also am a resident of Pinewood. And the reason I'm here today is because I was actually out in the woods hiking back there when we walked out with my friend Lily and we saw the sign of the public hearing. And I guess I've been a little bit head in the clouds. I didn't realize that I heard about it, but I didn't realize how prevalent this discussion has been going on for the last 5 years. So we wanted to come and sit in and hear what was happening. And I guess I have a little bit of appeal to pathos. I grew up in Pinewood, and my siblings and I and all the kids in the neighborhood spent a lot of time playing back there in the woods, and it was a really big part of my childhood, my teenage years, and obviously still now I spend time back there. And I think it's really important to grow up with that connection to the land and have the ability to explore. But more so than that, also I want to think about the habitat loss that will be impacting all the wildlife, such as the deer, the bears, foxes, coyotes, all of these animals, which I have seen a lot in my youth, and I have not seen as I've grown up. I've noticed a significant decrease in the wildlife in this neighborhood, and I know that this is because of habitat loss. And I suppose my concern, I know that Vermont is in a housing crisis, and I'm very young, so maybe I don't have as much knowledge as some of you. But I also am not sure that 10 units, what is being proposed, is worth the habitat loss that we will see for the animals that are living there, and just in general, a forest as a whole provides so much for a community in terms of land reconnection, but then also in terms of climate change mitigation. When we're looking at a forest as a carbon sink, we're not really making it better when we're cutting down all the trees. The they can't sequester carbon, and I'm sure I don't have to explain it to you. It goes up into the atmosphere. But I would just not like to see this developed, and I know it is not that simple. And I was also wondering if there was an environmental impact assessment that the developers may have that's open to the public. I'm not sure how that works, but if there is, I would be interested in reviewing that. I don't think I have much more than say. I just would like you guys to know that we do care about that land, and even if it is 2 acres that's getting impacted, that's still 2 acres. And I think the impact would be more than the 20% slope, because there's also the noise pollution, there's also the air pollution, there's all the stuff that is going to essentially drive out wildlife and impact the environmental area around there. Also more traffic, just all of this stuff it's going to take away a lot of the heart of Pinewood. And I would love to see the future generations also grow up with that connection to the forest and have that appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna get to you, but I'm gonna also allow somebody online. So I'll start with Ken. Ken Signorello, if you want it, you have your hand up. Perhaps not. How about then David? Thank you for acknowledging that you swore in, David. I appreciate that. Did you want to come on camera and speak?
They may need.
Yep. Camera isn't working, sorry. Can you unmute?
He did.
Yep.
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, do you need me to read the comment?
We can hear you now, so if you would go ahead and provide your comment.
Just for folks who don't know, we don't use the chat as a
My
process.
name is
for
David Rouse. I live on Valley View Drive in Pinewood Manor, and I swore in at the beginning of the meeting. I oppose this development for 2 main reasons. First, it will mean an increase in car traffic in the neighborhood, and as our neighborhood is full of kids and dog walkers and joggers, that wouldn't be great. Second, this development will diminish the wooded, wild space in the area. It isn't a huge space, and I understand that this proposal will try to spare some of that space, but even so, development of wooded areas is not a great idea, as Natalie Braun and the last speaker, whose name I didn't get, explained. I can see that a 10-unit development is preferable to a 32-unit development, but overall, I don't think this proposal benefits the people who currently live in the neighborhood at all. Thank you.
Lorraine?
I did not swear in.
You hereby affirm that your testimony or evidence you're about to give to the application under consideration is accurate and true to the best of your knowledge.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of questions. One, I think we're losing the bus down there, correct? We're not going to have public transportation to that area? Is anyone?
But right now it is slated to be cut.
Completely, I believe, Catherine. I think it was cut on the weekends.
The weekends was already cut. Yeah. So
Right.
it's come July 1st. Right now it is slated to be cut, but I know there are discussions about extending it. But
Right, but we don't know. So one of my concerns as we plan in terms of climate mitigation and public transportation is paying attention to car traffic and trying to reduce that. And if it's being built in an area where we're already struggling with bus
and public transportation. I don't think it's necessarily wise to build and add more into that area. And as far as infrastructure goes, I believe those infrastructures were put in many years ago before we were aware that climate impacts were going to be as exponentially growing as they are in terms of total rainfalls at one time and how often it happens and how wet we're getting. And I have serious concerns, regardless of the regs and the slopes and what the rules are, which hopefully we firm up to make it easier to understand for developers, because I don't like wasting developers' times either. It's not fair to them. But in terms of where it is and looking at the side of slope and growing up here and seeing how steep those slopes are and seeing what's happened in a couple of the other areas, like the one off Sand Hill, where we spent, I think, around $80,000 shoring up the slope right behind a condo build. And as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay more money for slope fixing again. You know, it's a lot of money that the developer doesn't pay into, but the taxpayer does. So I have serious concerns about this being worthwhile passing, because it doesn't add up for working for the public good overall. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Mukesh.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay.
Mukesh.
Yes, I swear that what I say is truth to the best of my knowledge.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, I know this item has been in discussion for quite some time, and I appreciate all the patience from developer side and from Planning Commission and now DRB side for doing the right thing. I'm just a little more sensitive to the steep slope, just because these steep slopes are very close to the active stream that goes to the rivers, and we know over past few years the impact on flooding has been enormous. And I think development projects like this in a steep topography like this really add to the problem. So what I wanted to say was, it will be a good idea, like another caller said, it'll be a good idea to firm up these 20% slope guidelines so that it's clear to everybody. But I'm quite sensitive to disturbing slopes so close to an active stream. With percentages, it may look small, but it all adds up in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ken, you still have your hand up.
Yes, I finally figured out how to get my unmute button to work. Can you hear me?
And did you swear in earlier?
He did.
I did,
Yep.
and I do swear that all testimony I give will be truthful to the best of my knowledge.
Go ahead.
I'm a little confused, Mr. Chairman. I opened up the packet today on my computer and have been reviewing the proposal in the packet, and it seems to be quite different than what was presented here tonight. So that's a little confusing to me, that what is being presented to the public when you're not present in person is very different than what seems to have been discussed at the meeting, which makes it difficult to comment intelligently. I'm not sure whether or not we're discussing the project that was in the packet or the project that was before you this evening. So that presents a bit of a challenge for me to comment intelligently, but I'll do the best I can. I'm the chairperson for the Conservation and Trails Committee. You may or may not know that, but I am. And I've reviewed the input that the Conservation and Trails Committee has had over this project. Since there's ambiguity of what we're really talking about, I'm going to take some license and just review what has happened over the years. Back in August of 2020, the Conservation and Trails Committee had some significant concerns about the development and drafted a letter saying so to the Planning Commission at the time with a 4-0 vote. Again, in August 2022, again, the Conservation and Trails Committee still remains concerned about the lack of clustering and associated impacts to forest and habitat blocks, worried about the proposal to impact steep slopes, which could lead to erosion issues, which would then create a financial burden for the town and homeowners. Although I did hear that the public road has been jettisoned from the project, which certainly is helpful in terms of mitigating risk to the town and the taxpayers. Not saying anything for the homeowners. Then in November of 2024, again, the Conservation and Trails Committee reviewed, I guess it was a revised project at the time. And once again, was still significant impact on slopes, 40% impacting slopes over 20% of the project, 40% of the project impacting slopes over 20%. And regulations were pretty clear about prohibiting development on those sorts of slopes. And then finally, again, and the committee at that time did vote to support the staff recommendation to deny that project that was proposed. And again, in December of 2024, once again, the same project with some changes was proposed, and same concerns basically were there: steep slopes and erosion risks, environmental impacts, stormwater management concerns, and forest and habitat preservation, or should I say loss in this case. So if this is a significantly modified proposal, certainly the Conservation and Trails Committee, we are obligated to produce advice for now the DRB, and the DRB is required to seek that advice. We want that opportunity to once again review this significantly changed plan. So that's all I have to say about that project, although I did hear some mention of waivers. And I just want to mention to you that when the Conservation and Trails Committee reviews a development, we do it with the assumption that regulations will be adhered to. When waivers are granted subsequently, well, that we did not take that into account. When that happens, it would be, I think, appropriate for the Conservation and Trails Committee to have the opportunity to understand what those waivers were, and if there were any mitigating trade-offs, what those were. And then finally, I do have some understanding about the 20% definition, and certainly there probably should be something about stating 20% over some horizontal distance. Granted, a 1 foot change in elevation over a 10-foot horizontal distance, that's a 10% change, significantly different than a 10-foot change over 100 feet. So that probably could stand some clarification, and maybe a recommendation to the Planning Commission would be advised. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Seeing no others online, is there anybody else still here in the audience that would like to speak? Yes, sir. Come on up.
We have another person online, John Weiner.
Okay.
Who added a note.
Just see that. Yeah, thank you. State your name and whether or not and where you live and whether or not you swore in.
The name is David Scopin, and I did arrive early enough to swear in, and I'm gonna remain true to my word. I'd like to kind of start on the slopes, because the slopes are a real big deal to everyone, and Essex zoning regulations, going to 5.6 site plan review. Topography, minimize changes in existing site topography and vegetation. We're talking about an amazing amount of changing what currently exists. Now, I do have a question. I'm assuming that not everyone present has actually walked the site yet. Is that true? Has everyone present on the board walked the site?
The site inspection was prior to the developmental review board.
Right. So you have not. Some of you present have not walked the site.
I have, but not as an official.
Gotcha. I would definitely hope that would be a requirement before you really weigh in on this. Noting the steep slopes, development is discouraged on slopes of 15% or steeper, on 15% or steeper, due to the likelihood of erosion. And so it would seem to me that the 20% would stop it there. But assuming it hasn't, we go on to other things. One of them is that we do need housing, but we need affordable housing, and the Essex experience has the possibility of putting affordable housing in an area where the housing commission recommends that we put housing in. And if we go to the housing commission, we can see what their mission plan is, and we can see quite clearly that Pinewood Manor does not qualify. We do not need expensive houses. We have plenty of expensive houses, and so we don't need to sacrifice a piece of land to put in more houses. What we need is to develop in areas where people have easy access to what they need on a regular basis. And of course, I noticed that your mission plan is very similar to everyone else's, which is that you where the heck did it go? Well, that you want to do sensible developments, and that's part of the town of Essex plan also. We all want to make sensible choices. We want to use things wisely, and certainly we're not doing that if we develop this piece of land. And I can't imagine that we really need to put this man through any more hassles than he's already been through over these years. I think what is recommended is that we shut it down right here. That you actually take the vote and shut it down. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We have another gentleman online. John, can you turn your camera on and let us know? I don't think you've sworn in, so. John?
You want to unmute yourself, John?
There we go, got it. Hi, this is John Wine. I did not swear in.
Okay, I'll ask you to turn your camera on, and I will ask that you hereby affirm that the testimony or evidence that you're about to give in the application under consideration is accurate and true to the best of your knowledge.
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I maybe have a counter view here. I live in Pinewood. I live in Wildwood. Love it here. Love the topography. I'm in favor of this development. I think it should proceed. I think, acknowledging the housing crisis in Vermont, it's too easy to say not in my backyard. But I think my understanding of where this is going to go, Essex, this part of Essex, is already relatively dense in terms of housing. So I think it fits into that model. We're not talking about pristine, untouched land here. I do understand and can empathize with people's history with Pinewood and this section of Chittenden County and wanting to maintain green spaces. I guess I don't really feel that this will impinge on that. There's still quite a few available spaces for all of us. And as long as the mitigation strategies that are deemed necessary are employed, I don't really have any concerns. I'm certain that the property I live on did not exist in terms of its topography when this land was originally here before it was developed. There were mitigation strategies put in place. I believe I have much greater than 20% grades on my property, and those mitigation strategies have held ever since 1976 when this house was built. So long story short, I'm in favor of moving forward with the development.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Probably not as prepared as everybody else. I feel like I should have taken a couple days off work to make notes. Pete Hess. I live in Pinewood on Timberlane Drive.
And you were here to swear in earlier?
Yes, sir, I was. Yep. I'm in favor of this development. I believe that it's what Pinewood needs. I think Essex needs it. the state of Vermont. We talk about the housing crisis, whatever. This is a small number of houses, so an argument could be made that it's inconsequential in the big picture, or you could argue it's a step towards more housing that some people would say we need. I would agree with that. Pinewood is an awesome neighborhood. I've been there since 2013. 2 young boys. We can be a chatty bunch over there in Pinewood. And Mr. Marcotte, over the years, I've heard requests made for various reasons to him, and I feel like he's trying to do well by the Pinewood residents each step of the way. So I think that when you look at the adjustments that have been made to this application, I think he's demonstrating that he's willing to continue down that road, making concessions and whatever that meet your needs or the needs of the town staff or anyone else weighing in here. We talk about using the woods back there. I used to hunt back there. That kind of became a thing, so that hasn't happened recently. But I can assure you there's still lots of critters running around. There's lots of places to recreate very close to Pinewood, as well as not too far of a vehicle ride away in the state. There's lots of beautiful places in Vermont. We all love to live in Chittenden County, but the reality is if you wanted a slice of heaven that was not impacted by lots of neighbors and other homes, you don't have to move too far away. It's not that much of a drive. I think we do need a variety of housing in the state. We need apartment buildings. We need single-family homes. Whether any of us like it or not, you might even need a big mansion on the hill somewhere for a certain resident or whatever. So I'm not sure we can say that we don't need one type of housing and we should just be done with that altogether. I don't think that's very appropriate. Climate change, we could all guess about what's happening with the climate. There's no doubt that in certain parts of the country and here as well that it seems like there's bigger storms and more hardcore storms and it's a shame what happens to folks that are impacted by those. But the other reality is that the pendulum could swing the other way and we may see it that not be the case. Is that likely? I don't know. None of us. I can't. I shouldn't speak for anybody else. I can't argue that. I'm not a meteorologist or anything. Impacting steep slopes. Your job, right? We've talked about what your job is. I guess your job is to have the best interest of the community. Same with the town staff. But I don't see Essex as like a net zero development picture anytime in the near future. And I think that in order to get that development done, inevitably you're going to be impacting, in this case, steep slopes somewhere along the line. So the applicant, again, makes concessions. You talk about mitigations for a project or whatever, and hopefully find some middle ground that protects the environment, is best interest for the town of Essex, and allows business to move on and more folks to join our community in new homes. I guess we just talked about doing your due diligence. I don't know if you guys get a stipend to be here. I think you're volunteers, but if you're not, I'm sure it's not that much. Some of you I know have done this for a long time, decades. So I commend you for that. And obviously you know the process and procedure better than I do. So I guess you have to go through those steps and figure it out. So I don't know. Thanks for that, I guess. Taking advantage of all possible mitigations. There's a lot of smart people that have been involved here. The applicant and his engineer here talked about bioengineers that have been involved, and other members of the town staff and public works and various departments have looked at these plans and said that they are fine with it. It's kind of unbelievable to me that this latest development with the plan was to swipe away that entire town road and all of the units that were on it. I can't. Anyway, that to me that feels like a serious show of like the applicant is here to play, right? Like we're willing to make some real big concessions. So I hope that's considered by everybody, whoever has to be looking at that and decide whether or not everyone involved has the town of Essex best interest of the town in mind. You talked about waivers. Certainly a waiver, just because there's a waiver there doesn't mean you have to grant it. At the same time, a waiver exists so that you can consider it and grant it if you see fit. I think that's appropriate in this situation, but I guess time will tell on that. And I also think that you guys aren't unique. There's lots of construction jobs that drag on for years and years and years. This applicant's not unique. Lots of other people go through the trouble of this process. But I believe, going back to my original statement, that this is exactly what is needed for Pinewood and Essex and the state of Vermont. I would ask that you, as quickly and as responsibly as possible, go through your process and ultimately find that this development should go forward. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've heard from pretty much everybody, so I would say it's probably time to kind of go around and talk about any questions that you might have.
Start on that side.
All right, I'll start on that side. Yubi.
Yeah, the whole 20% thing is a tricky thing. Okay, it's interpretation, it's words, and I'm not sure that any of us can agree as to exactly how to interpret it. All right, I think we all have. I hate to use all these all-inclusive things, but I think many of us have different interpretations of what that may mean. It's not, to me, it's not clear in the regulation. That seems to be the primary holdup for the staff's recommendation to not approve the application. Given they've provided a significantly, very significantly different layout, I think we should just continue this process, not go back to sketch, give the applicant time to prepare more information. Obviously, they're going to have to update their EPSC plan, other details for staff and us to review, and keep this going. I think everybody's put too much time into this to just throw it out the window at this point, considering there's such a significant change. And don't think for a moment I'm suggesting this, but the idea of a waiver in the regulations is there to handle unusual circumstances. It's the same in the zoning regulations where you have a variance. It's to handle those situations that may be outside of the ordinary. So I don't think we should for a moment push the idea that a waiver should not be considered. I don't think we're even there yet. We might get to a point where we say that we're okay with this new design, but I don't want to leave people with the impression that just because the word waiver is there, that somehow is a bad word. It's in the regulations for a purpose.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Can I go next before I lose the steam? I want to say that this may not happen again for a while. Ditto.
Thank you.
Wow.
Nick?
Actually, the same. Yes, I agree. I guess I'll add, just to be short and sweet, present a new plan with more information, just update numbers and information for us to review, and we'll be happy to look at it.
I don't have anything.
No? Okay.
I think I can't do the ditto. Sorry. And I do agree that there is a reason for the waiver, but I think there also has to be something major given back to the town to get any waiver. And I also think, I guess the definition of 20% is not clear, but it is in the regulations, and much of this project exceeds that, and there was an intent behind that.
Right. I mean, and to be clear, to make sure that we're all on the same page, and for all those that are here as well, that we are here to just talk about the application that's before us that has some changes.
Right.
That perhaps we could entertain otherwise, right?
Right, and we just had, none of us have had a chance to review
Right.
it is the issue.
Right. Yes.
Something I forgot to mention, that I am an interested party,
Okay.
and that should go into the record, and I will develop a in detail information sheet, which I will try to get to you all as soon as I possibly can, covering all the issues here at hand. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We have to motion to close.
We don't want to
No,
close the public hearing.
don't wanna
We're
close
gonna
it,
continue.
right.
So I'd offer a motion to continue with the next opportunity when the applicants had time to revise. The next opportunity after the applicant has had time to revise, applicant staff had time to revise the preliminary plan. With one addition is I'd like, weather permitting, to have a site visit prior to the next hearing. So continue it, have a site visit, and then have the hearing.
It sounds like 3 motions. Is that
It's
just-
one long one.
Do we have a motion that's on the table? Does anybody have a second?
I'll second.
Trevor, Dusty makes the motion. Trevor has the second. All those in favor?
Point of order. We should
Go
have
ahead.
some discussion here.
Yep, go right ahead.
Okay. To continue this, have a site visit, and what was the third thing?
Just then have the preliminary. It wasn't so 3 things. It was let them work on the application, but have a site visit prior to the preliminary hearing when we actually, the continued hearing.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to
No,
clarify
that's
that,
fine.
that's all. Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I'm not in the habit of, I've been out of practice in making motions, so.
Okay, so we have a motion made. It's been seconded. We've had some discussion. All those in favor of the motion? Say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting. Everyone had a chance to review the minutes.
Yes.
Any comments or questions for staff about the minutes?
Yeah, a
I
couple.
can go
if
first.
You wanna move
or-
If I can find them.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I can go first.
Please.
Excellent job. But lines 305 and 311, members Russo and Levine. Do we have a Levine?
Planning Commissioner Levine, but not DRB member.
So I'm wondering
Page
who
180.
made that friendly amendment, if we remember.
Hubie made
I
the
will
friend.
have to go and look at my cheat notes.
Okay, thanks, Sharon.
Hang
So
on.
that was line 305, and what other line, Nick?
305 and 311. That's all that I saw.
Line 258. The original motion was on 258. Hubie offered a friendly amendment so that line 305 just needs to be revised to say Russo and Bixby
And 311,
on
right.
311, yes.
Okay.
Good catch.
Anything
Yep,
else?
I had a couple.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Line 99. Member Williams asked if the curbs were elevated. I don't think that's what he asked. I think he asked if the roadway was super elevated.
That's right. That's what I asked.
All right.
Yes, it's true.
You remember?
And then also where it says, Brian Curry replied that that wasn't the curb, but it should substitute roadway for curbs there. And then not be elevated, but normal crown. So it would read, Brian Currier replied that the roadway would be normal. would be normal crown, and he felt the state would, et cetera. Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else, Hubie?
130, line 133. It says, he requested that street trees be omitted in a section where the road could be pinched to the curb. I think he meant sidewalk could be pinched to the curb.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Line 193. Johnson stated that there are 3 cross-sections across the road. I think what he said was that there are 3 typical cross-sections for the road. I don't think there were any cross-sections supplied in that set of plans. It was just, those were the typical cross-sections as supplied in the town.
What section was that in, Hubie? I think the numbering on my copy.
193.
Section? My numbering is coming out different than yours.
Oh, pardon, you made some.
Page 5, second paragraph.
Where it starts Kent Johnson, paragraph that starts Kent Johnson.
Yes.
Ask Senecal if he was advocating for just for himself.
I don't think I said that, but that's fine that it's there.
Because there were no cross sections supplied with those plans. Because I was quite interested in wanting to see some cross sections, particularly in that steep portion. But I think the only ones that were supplied were the typical sections that come out of the town public works. Like this is a typical section.
Got it.
Also, line 232 at the bottom of that page. Senecal stated that there will be some on-site storage of materials, and I want that, and some potential for material taken off-site.
Got it.
Next.
And I'd mentioned before on line 248, where it says an unidentified person asked how the intersection would work. Yeah, we should be careful about that. They're going to talk. They want to say who they are, whether they're lying or not.
Yeah, I wonder what you'd do. Like we had a situation where it just said, "I am not telling you who I am." Just
yeah. Well, sorry. Click. You can
I don't think
delete
we
them
can.
from the.
I think
from
we
the-
could
right?
do that, but that would be pretty aggressive.
We wouldn't have to necessarily entertain their commentary.
That's true.
What did you say?
We wouldn't necessarily have to entertain their commentary, interaction.
Yeah.
If they're not willing to.
Yeah, and he didn't
identify
speak, so it's probably fine.
Yeah, and another general comment was that right at the very beginning, beginning at line 31, where Patty Davis provided her dialogue, we included the whole thing, and I'm wondering if that's is a standard process. We have testimony from different people. We don't necessarily include everything that they said.
You don't. Well,
She asked for it.
Yeah.
yeah. She specifically.
She specifically handed it to
yeah.
me so that it
She
would be
asked
included.
for it to be included in the record.
So it was like a letter, almost.
Okay, so that's so because she said that, that needs to be printed out like that. I just
Correct.
yeah. Okay.
Are you done?
Yes.
No, I wasn't trying to stop you. Line 195, it says property is in a resource district, and I think it's a resource preservation district. Or RPDI, I think I said. And then I would like, and as Hubie said, I don't want the whole thing in, but we waived two regulations sort of without a formal waiver. So it's sort of like Kent.
What line are you on, Sharon?
I'm on no line. Because I don't know where it goes, but Kent said this over and over, and we sort of just, in his nice soft voice, and we sort of I think we ignored it, so I sort of listened to it, and can I just read what he said, and maybe we could put it where it belongs?
Sure.
It was in the waiver discussion. So he said, we were talking about eliminating the trees in the buffer, and he said that we wouldn't have to eliminate the trees if the utilities weren't put in a way which is possible because they aren't in yet. He pointed out that this was a zoning requirement. This was an opportunity for creativity. If it were designed properly, the multi-use path, trees, and road could all coexist with plenty of space. And then he said it over and over again, and then eventually said, I'll check with Public Works to see if they want to come up with something different than the regulations. So I sort of like that in there. Because we sort of did come up with something that,
I think if you want to continue these minutes, and I'll go back, I didn't have that written, and sorry, Ken, Shannon said you said it a few times, it's not ringing any bells with me tonight. So either I can go through and look at my notes to see if I started off with something like that, or
Okay.
I can,
You could listen to the recording.
I could give you part of the minute.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'll
That would
fi-
be helpful.
I'll find you the minute so you don't have to go through, listen to the whole thing.
Thank you. I might have it written in my notes, and maybe I just, didn't grab it, but.
And
Yeah,
that
we
was
can
it.
catch him.
And that was it for me.
It was during that time talking about deferring to the Public Works about the trees and stuff and so on, and what could be done or couldn't be done, and,
I'm just worried that, I think that should be in.
Yeah,
Fine.
happy to do it. I just would feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Just as a process point, since we're not on a motion right now. If we know points like that ahead of time, let them, we can get them to Sharon, like, during
I'm
the
just
week.
worried about the whole ex parte thing because I'm not used to this.
It's not, if you're going back to staff.
I can just
Correct.
go to
Go to
staff.
Just staff.
Okay, I would
And-
love that.
And what that does, that would allow her to research it and bring it in, and then there'd be.
I just won't do reply to all.
No, it's no, I mean, it's.
Just directly to staff.
Just an
Right.
email
Yeah.
to me here.
And that way that could be done and brought to the minutes. Sharon could even amend them prior to the
Gotcha.
night. It just.
And I
gives-
should have done that, you're right.
It just gives her an opportunity to do that work ahead of time.
Was there anything else? Did anybody have any notes?
No, not for me.
Move to continue the minutes until the next meeting.
Trustee has made a motion,
I'll second. This is my night to say.
I guess. Any discussion? All those in favor of continuing the minutes of the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay? Motion passes 6-0.
Good job, Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Every time.
Working on it. I'm doing my homework.
I must admit I didn't look at those Robert's rules yet.
Oh, yeah.
They're overwhelming.
Yes, they are. Yep. I believe.
so, could I,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, as far as, if it's appropriate to say that for the staff, like, when he was up there showing us this new layout or whatever, all the red lines and so on, I kind of assumed that those were the areas that they weren't going to impact anymore, but it wasn't clear and so on. So I suspect that whatever they come up with and come back, they'll clarify all of that about what was previously going to be disturbed and what is not now going to be disturbed.
I would hope so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't spoken with them
Yeah,
about
oh
this
yeah,
at all.
no.
They
but
sent
they
us
just kind of
this
they sent
right
you
before
an
the meeting.
email just before the meeting or
Yep.
whatever and said, so you had no idea what this was.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Wow.
No.
Wow.
Maybe next time they have changes, they could do it like forward time.
Well, yeah.
I don't think that's kosher to do it that way. Like after they submit an application, we don't want changes as we've reviewed things. So if they have something they want to bring to the meeting, that's the time to do it. Unfortunately, unless we ask for something from them. Yes, to be honest though, I had an idea that they were thinking of something like this, but I didn't know what it was. So.
Plus they
But
have
they didn't want to
those-
submit it either.
Plus they have those other items that are outstanding as well.
Yeah, because I think it would
Which
have
they
been
don't-
better for them too,
Yeah.
because you would have had everything there, and maybe it would be good, like maybe there would have been a waiver if we had all the information.
That was a suggestion to them, yes. You're right.
Still to have time for
Are we adjourned?
public
And
words.
any other business that we have to,
Look at, whatever.
do we have
I
any
don't
other
think we
business?
should, no, we're on,
I think-
on
I
record.
think
guess
the only
No,
other
we don't wanna-
business thing that
It's
I
okay to say that. I think.
wanted to note was we have a lot of applications that have come in the door, right? I don't know what the
I
exact
think we have
number are. but-
5 or 6 applications right now.
Yeah, which is, yeah. So I think Brittany sent out an email request asking about adding a second March meeting, as we've talked about that being a possibility, having a second meeting in a month. I think we'll need to do that for March. So March 20th, I think.
And that's now considered a regularly scheduled meeting, which is on the
It's
town
on
website.
It is on the website.
Okay.
Yep. So, but still as needed. It's not
Right.
assumed that we'll
Like you
have it,
used to
but-
do that for zoning, right? Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it.
Okay, any other business? I would consider us, do I need a motion for this? Yeah, I do need a motion for this. So I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Nick, seconded by Dusty. Any other conversations? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes.
Passes 6-0.
Did you bring the beer, Dusty?
Recording stopped.